Hi, and thank you for attending the GETS Education program for September 26, 2013. Hi, my name is Lanny Creedle, and we're here to discuss the voice LAN WAN Towers for the GETS Ed program. If you'll go to slide number 2, you'll see that we want to review quickly last month, which was mainframe, the topics there as they have been in the past. We're understanding the services, the charges, and how they're calculated, and the primary processes and tools all around mainframe services. The learning objectives, as always, there's an evaluation at the end. You should have that available there, so please take time to fill that out. If you'll move to slide 3, we have some extra news that we wanted to pass along to you. We had the GETS Dispute Process Education session back in August on the 28th. We had 34 participants, an on-site and webinar. And if you missed that, there's the link that you can use to get the information that we had, the presentations for the webinar. Secondly, there's a GETS Ed 2 program where we providing all the same education to your agency staff. We've completed 3 of those sessions now, and since this was written, and been pretty successful. At least we've been available as people need to call in. We've had a few folks call in. If you need to have anybody else sign up, just let Lanny Creedle know. You can send him, which is me, an email, and I'll take care of that, getting them on, so their information will send out prior to those conference calls that are scheduled. Also, there's a deeper dive mainframe webinar, which was held October the 2nd from 1:30 to 2:30. The mainframe agencies had asked for more deeper dive, if you will, into mainframe at the August education session. So we sent those invites out, and that was scheduled for October 2nd. And finally, there's a special November session that will be on storage. We're actually going to take a look before transformation, if you will, and after transformation, what storage looks like in the new environment, and there'll be details to follow for that. If you'll move to slide number 4, you'll see that the GETS Ed program, kind of the calendar, where we've been and where we're going with today's voice LAN and WAN towers. Slide 5 is really just the beginning where we're going to go with the voice LAN and WAN. So let's move to slide 6. Let's make sure we're all headed in the right direction, same direction with the learning objectives for this particular session. We want to make sure we understand the services in those 3 towers, the way the charges are calculated in voice LAN and WAN, and the primary processes and tools that you can use to manage those 3 towers. And again, there's a feedback or an evaluation at the end of this that we hope you'll fill out. We want to make sure that that everybody does actually understand what we're talking about. So if there is need for information, we always look at that feedback, we review it, and then if we need to, we can set up special sessions like we did for the mainframe and for the dispute process, or we can get back to individual agencies to make sure that they understand what we're talking about. If we move to slide 6, this is the agenda for today. Very similar to most of the others except a different tower. Excuse me, this is slide 8. The agenda, the better understanding of your GETS voice LAN WAN services, the resource units and charges for those towers, and also how to leverage those primary processes and tools so that you can manage the towers. All right, so we're going to start on slide 9. I guess we've seen this slide in most of the other presentations. It's really, again, emphasizing the change in the last 4 or 5 years for the state's IT. We've moved from buying and maintaining hardware to purchasing the services, the IT services. It is a consumption-based model, and you only pay for what you consume. And the idea is that we're here to help educate you so that you can own and manage that consumption of services. So if you'll move to slide 10, you'll see here that we've got the entire list, kind of in a summary, if you will, of all three towers, the voice, LAN, and WAN towers. And these are the services under each of the towers. It goes from just plain old telephone service, and video and web conferencing, local area networks, private networks, and then common network services, things I like to call behind the curtain that you don't really get to see. But if they don't work, your services aren't provided and you can't use them. So let's move to slide 11. This is just a picture of a voice, LAN, WAN RUs on an invoice. So this is your M&S invoice, your Managed Network Services invoice. It's the services provided through AT&T, and it's just kind of framing up what we're going to talk about for the next few minutes on what these look like, and really kind of the idea here is we want to understand how to manage these and manage that consumption. This is a picture of some of those RUs on your bill. As we move to slide 12, we're going to start taking each tower and kind of split it up into three parts, if you will, into each of the three towers. So we'll start with the voice tower first, and we'll do LAN, and we'll finish up with the WAN tower. But let's talk about the voice tower. Here are some terms that will be helpful to know as you look today and as you work with GTA and AT&T in the future. An IMAC is simply an install, move, add, change. Those will be orders that you've seen. If you add a D to that, the IMAC D is just a delete for something you may be removing from the environment. A trunk, that's a common group of central office lines, if you will. They're pooled together, and they terminate into special equipment like a PBX or a key system. Again, that's something good to know. You may not see that all the time, but you certainly use trunks at many places like your headquarters locations, especially for the enterprise customers. Video conferencing is conferencing that allows two or more locations to engage in two-way audio-video communications simultaneously. In web conferencing, that's what we're doing right now. It's a webinar. It allows presentation to be shared with remote locations. As we move to slide 13, we'll take a look at the voice tower before and after GETS. Really before GETS, the voice services, the agencies were on their own, had autonomous agencies to do really how they chose to receive and procure their voice services, actually their video and their audio as well. GTA did provide contracts for the audio and web conferencing through Quest, but for the most part, as you can see here, the agencies went out and could contract on their own for those services. After GETS, we've, if you will, consolidated and provided a single service provider. AT&T manages all the voice. They have a third party that provides the video conferencing, and AT&T Connect is of course AT&T's own audio and web conferencing product. So as we move to slide 14, we can see the RUs. So we'll start talking about the resource units for the voice tower. Your voice port basic is just your basic handset with this set of features. Kind of how you can tell you're talking about a basic, it would be a phone with up to 2 lines or 2 station appearances. And you can see the host of other features that come with that. Either they're programmed on buttons or sometimes they're just programmed on the line, and you would have to know the code to use and to enable those features. One of the neat things about this is your long distance is included in your cost of your RU, so you have unlimited long distance. If we move to slide 15, this is the premium voice port RU. You can see here some of the differences. The premium set would be able to hold up to 6 lines or 6 station appearances. It comes with all the basic features, and then you add these additional features that you see here, such as intercom, distinctive ringing, conference calling, do not disturb functions. The thing here I look at are the 6 appearances and the intercom. A lot of times you see that kind of a thing at a central answering position or a boss administrative assistant type arrangement. So you don't really see a lot of premiums out in the environment, but they are available where you need them. So as we move to slide 16, here is the trunk, voice port trunk. Again, for the enterprise customers, you don't see this on your bill. It's included with the pricing of your basic and your premium voice ports. We have a lot of the voice port trunks that will bill directly to colleges and universities. But here it's a picture that you can just see. It's the ability to provide like a big pipe, if you will, from AT&T to your location, such as a headquarters location, say DDS in Conyers, or DNR out there in Social Circle, or DOR there on Claremont Road. Different places where you have a large population of your staff, and so you want to be able to provide a large pipe, if you will, to that location. So as we move to slide 17, we'll get to see resource units for the rest of the voice tower services. And you've got them here: voice mailbox, the video conferencing room, which contains 2 with or without on-site support. You've got contact center seats, services, and 3 kinds there: basic, premium, and CRM. You've got interactive voice response ports. That would be like when you call the bank or you call revenue for that matter, and you put in some information, and automatically it gives you back information like your bank account totals, or maybe when your tax return is coming and that kind of a thing. That would be an IVR. An auto attendant port is where you actually call in and you may hear press 1 for sales, press 2 for service, like at a car center, press 3 for a receptionist. Basically, it's acting and functioning as an attendant and directing your calls somewhere else. So we bill for that service as well. So let's move to slide 18. And we'll come out of the voice tower into the LAN tower. So there's some more detailed definitions here, and I'll just run through those. Some of these will be unfamiliar. Some of them might be familiar. So this, again, will help as you discuss or talk about the LAN tower. The DHCP, which is your Dynamic Host Configuration Protocol. That's really the set of rules that's used to configure those devices out on the network. The DHCP and then the next one, DNS, these are things I call behind the curtain. You don't see or come in contact with them that much, but if they're not working, your communications from your computer out to the rest of the world is broken. The DNS is the domain name system. It's the phone book for the internet that translates the computer name to an IP address. So for every computer out there, there is an IP address associated with it that's much the same as a phone with a phone number. Every phone has a separate, unique phone number as well. DNS is that for on the computer side. You can see we also included IMAC and IMAC-D, again for the LAN tower, same type of RU there. Internet Protocol, which is IP, and that's the primary communications protocol used on the Internet. You're probably familiar with that. IP addressing services is a numerical label assigned to each device on a network. So every computer, just like every phone has a number, every computer has a label assigned, and this keeps track of that. So let's move to slide 19, some additional definitions. A network, of course, is just a connection that allows the computers to share data. IPAM is the Internet Protocol Address Management. That's a method of tracking and modifying the information associated with a network's IP address space. Just like a phone book keeps track of all the phone numbers, in the state, in the country. ITAM does that, the management of that for every IP address for devices that are on the network. Of course, we're looking at the LAN tower, which is the local area network. Usually that's a network associated with, say, a building or a small site like a campus versus something that's much bigger or broader in a geographic region. WLAN stands for wireless local area network. So again, a campus or a building may have a wireless LAN in that. So if we look at slide 20, here with LAN towers, well, before and after gets, definitely in the LAN tower, agencies were pretty much, they did their own thing. You were able to procure what you needed. You refreshed your hardware when you had the funds, when the budget was available. After gets, there is now a single standard solution, of course, with the enterprise. It's AT&T provides that service. It's fully managed and it's centrally managed. We try to use the same architecture across. We standardize on devices, that kind of a thing. And also, AT&T integrates your local area network with your wide area network as well, so other services, which is good. And one of the benefits is that your hardware is refreshed on a consistent schedule, regardless of the budget conditions. It still has continued to be refreshed. So let's move to slide 21. We'll start looking at the RUs for the LAN tower. So a LAN port RU, that's considered active when it's connected via wiring to equipment or a physical wall jack and authorized for use by a GTA customer. That's a LAN port. So for every device you have on the network, there's a port that connects you on a device. And that's very important because IBM's current LAN attached device measurement is used for billing, and the volumes, just so you'll know, lag a month behind the IBM billing. So this is important here. AT&T really doesn't have much to do with how many, the quantity of the LAN ports. Again, it's an IBM measurement, and it's based on the LAN attached device. And we talked about this a few months ago in an education session for EUC. So that LAN attached device count is what AT&T uses to bill you for LAN ports. And later in this presentation, we'll talk about managing that, but it's a good thing to know, and it's a little unique here in this particular tower. Also, you have wireless access points. That's an active access or wireless access point. And there's a little picture here that kind of just shows how that would be set up. And you have access points around a building or around a campus again, all managed by AT&T. So as we move to slide 22, we'll move out of the LAN tower into the WAN tower. So here are the definitions that will be valuable for the WAN tower, and there are quite a few of them. Of course, we have Capitol Hill fiber that's been in the ground for many years. We used that, and it came over with the deal, with the outsourcing deal. It's a high bandwidth fiber. It's around the Capitol and the towers and the other state buildings there on Capitol Hill. There's a class of service known as COS. That's a way of managing the traffic in a network by grouping similar types of traffic together and treating each type as a class with its own level of service priority. We'll talk about this a little later, but so for instance, you might have a different priority set on data that comes across, say, from email versus your voice, which is converted to data, or your video. And if you put all that on the same line or circuit, then you may need to prioritize how that goes. That's where class of service comes in. MPLS stands for multi-protocol label switching. That's the technology that we use on all of our wide area network services in the WAN tower. And it just is how the architecture and how these circuits are set up through the AT&T network. Of course, network there, again, connections that allow computers to share data. A couple of other interesting definitions. POP, P-O-P, is the point of presence. This would be where AT&T actually has its facilities in towns and in cities around the state. The POP diversity is a site that's connected to our network with multiple links, and those links are connected at different points in the network to AT&T, so that you have redundant connections. If one goes down, the other stays up, and your location, say headquarters location, would not experience any downtime. Let's move to slide 23. Some more definitions in the WAN tower. Radius is a remote access dial-in user service. It's a method for securing remote access to services, so you wouldn't see that per se, but you use it if you're at home or somewhere away from the office and you're accessing the network there. Your SSL, VPN, and your VPN kind of go together. VPN being your virtual private network, which allows a private network to be extended over a public network like the internet. And one type of that VPN is SSL VPN, which is secure socket layer. That's what we use here in the state. AT&T uses that. Just provides a layer of security on any of your connections, your transmissions over that VPN. And then we do define WAN here, the wide area network, which it links across broad areas like cities or regions or even national boundaries. Moving to slide 24, before and after gets. Before gets, with your WAN tower, each agency provided its own network. The monitoring was inconsistent and done by many other organizations, and the hardware, again, was refreshed when you had the money. Again, agencies were pretty autonomous in how they went about procuring this type of service. Today, after gets, AT&T has the network. It's responsible for the security, it's responsible for the devices, and they manage those in a consistent way, and they monitor those. The standards across the network now are consistent, and the hardware is refreshed on a consistent basis. So going to slide 25, let's talk about the RUs, the resource units that cover the WAN tower. So we have sites, different locations, if you will, for your WAN, your wide area network. And they're split, as you can see here, type A, B, and D. If you're type A, you're here on Capitol Hill with a fiber connection. B, you're an enterprise customer, which a lot of you here would see then with a site. And type D, your enterprise customers obviously wouldn't see that because this is a non-enterprise customer site. Like a college, university, local government, that kind of a thing. The firewall management RU is your Cisco Integrated Services Router firewall. You'll see those at many of the remote data centers at a lot of the headquarters locations for your enterprise customers. Broadband internet is simply a WAN site connected to the public internet. These would be in the more rural areas, away from the cities, where you are working with other providers. AT&T is working with other providers to get you just some kind of connection because there are very few choices out in some of the rural places around the state. Your premise firewall is also firewall for the remote data centers. And those run from small and medium and large. The way you can think of these is a small single device. Your small RU, if you will, obviously a lower cost, would be at a remote site. And your large, high availability type RU would be obviously probably the most expensive, and it would be a place where you might have two devices for redundancy, and that would be at places like your headquarters sites or where you might have a large data center out away from the NADC. So let's move to slide 26, looking at some more RUs for the WAN tower services. We have the class of service that we defined a little bit ago. And so if you have a WAN link or circuit, here with class of service capability, that's the one that allows you to prioritize your bandwidth. So if you've got here the example voice, video, and your applications, you can prioritize and say, I want my video to go first more frequently because it's the one that's bothered, if you will, the most by latency, by the time it takes for that transmission to occur. So you might send your video through first priority, your voice might be second, and then like your email or something might go third. So as you prioritize that, your link has to be programmed, if you will, with class of service. And that's more expensive than a WAN link without class of service capability. And again, it just doesn't. It just sends the data as the devices send the data. There's a little picture showing, again, how your LAN and your wireless and your WAN circuits are connected to the network. Let's move to slide 27. More RUs. So we did talk about POP and POP diversity in the definitions. We have RUs covering a WAN link with your class of service that's providing POP diversity. And that's where it's engineered, where you've got redundant connections and redundant devices. You can see there the speeds from 1.5 megs to 200 megabits per second. And so that, again, you would see these more than likely at like your big headquarters sites like a GBI or Department of Revenue, that kind of place where it's just, you really can't have the service go down at some of those sites. Your point-to-point circuit, showing from 56K to 1.5 meg bandwidth. Those are probably older circuits, radio circuits, loops that have been out in there in the field for a long time, and we need some way to capture and continue to bill for those. You don't see too much of that around anymore, but it's from point to point. It's exactly what it says, from one address to another. Metro Ethernet, you find these in your more metro areas, Atlanta, Savannah, Albany, the bigger cities in the state, where the facilities for phone companies, AT&T, are all there, so they can provide the higher bandwidth, the higher speed data. And you can see we have 20 meg, 100 meg, or up to 250 megabits service, and this is just high speed data. And it's actually, this is a pretty good deal. AT&T has done a very good job in pricing this one. Your Capitol Hill Fiber WAN link, again, is your fiber around Cap Hill. It's a connection on the switch, and we have two RUs there. We have a 100 megabit connection and a 1 gigabit connection, which translates to 2 different RUs, and of course the 1 gig is more expensive than the 100 megabit RU. Your remote VPN subscriber, using SSL, remember we defined that secure socket layer, single factor or 2-factor authentication, so we have 2 different RUs there. You see a lot of this with law enforcement, local police departments getting access to GBI's crime information system kind of a thing, GBI itself. Different places that need access to that would use a remote VPN subscriber. Cost is like it's a little less than $3 per person, if you will, per subscriber. The broadband internet transport is your basic connection to the internet, and it's usually, again, found more out in the rural areas, but it's your basic. It's not all that fast, 3 meg or 6 meg Ethernet. It gives you just a connection to the internet, and nothing special on that per se, but it is a fairly low cost service. Let's go to slide 28. Looking at the rate history, you can see, this one is easy, that the wide area network rates have proven flat over the last 13, 14 months here that we show. And this is a good news story because they have just remained flat. So you definitely can budget. This is pretty self-evident here on this slide. This makes it easy to budget where your WAN rates are concerned. Moving to slide 29, the LAN and the voice rates are relatively stable, not as flat, if you will, as the LAN. But you can see here, over time, there's been a few bumps, but for the most part, they have remained fairly fairly consistent. Those bumps were normalized a month or at the most 2, but looks like 1 month later. And so again, you're able to look over a budget year and do pretty good with your projections for your rates. Let's move to slide 30. Looking at now best practices. So how do I manage this stuff that I've been seeing? We think one of the first things you can do is to reconcile your bill. Even over the history of managed network services, if you think of AT&T and other telecom type companies, billing has been interesting. And so really one of the things that we recommend is every month that you reconcile your bill. You take a look at that. As you know, and we'll talk about later, there are processes for disputing things and working through if they're not correct. But just understanding what you've got and making sure that the quantities and the counts are what you're paying for. That's one way you can manage your consumption here, is reconciling the bill. Moving to slide 31. Managing your EUC device count. Remember a bit ago we talked about the LAN port resource unit. That's how AT&T bills for the LAN tower. Well, that LAN port resource unit quantity comes from the EUC device count that IBM uses back for their contract. So as you make sure that that EUC device count is accurate, then your LAN port RU is going to be accurate as well. If you move locations, make sure those circuits are disconnected. If you're not using them for whatever reason, you may still be at a location and for some reason you've changed the business processes there and you no longer need that circuit. Let's just make sure those circuits are disconnected. Also, each agency has its own telecommunications policy. Just like who can make long distance calls or who can is allowed to do certain things using your phone or using connections to the internet and that kind of thing. All that's governed not only through the OPV policy that you see here, but certainly each agency has other unique regulations, and you just need to make sure everybody's following those. That will continue to help making sure that you're using the state services most efficiently and obviously according to regulations. Moving to slide 32, continue some more best practices here. Making sure that your circuits are the right size and speed to meet your business needs. One way that you can do that, and we can help you with that, is making use of reports that provide the utilization on those particular circuits or the WAN circuit. So here's one thing that we use here that will be helpful. When you have a circuit, and we'll define this in the report coming up, but if the circuit is hot, we consider it hot. It's where over the month, the course of a month, the utilization rises above 50%. That doesn't mean it's good or bad necessarily. It just means those are the ones that we think you ought to take a look at, because it's possible that they could be spiking to like 100% utilization, which would cause some problems. So we say, without looking at everything, let's look at the ones that are above 50%. If you take a look at that and you think there's a problem, you can submit an RFS to ask AT&T to further analyze that traffic, and they'll be happy to do that. On the other hand, if a circuit is considered cold, where over the month it's 1% or below with circuit utilization, could be that something's broken, that you're not using it at all, it was oversized to begin with, so there's a possibility that perhaps even reducing the size or eliminating it altogether would help save some money. If that's the case, you need to make a change, again, and submit an RFS, and we can work through that. Moving to slide 33. So how, if I want to make some changes in the voice LAN WAN services, what do I do? So here in this chart, it's kind of showing, do I do an RFS? Do I use the service catalog and place an order through Order Now? And then what's my threshold? So without reading everything on the page, you can kind of see where you need to use an RFS like with the WAN and internet links, or for your LAN, if you're fixing to make a move or change of 10 or fewer, you can use through service catalog orders. If you're going to make more than 10, say 11 or above, then you would need an RFS in your LAN tower. And you can look at the voice, the thresholds change there, 20 and even up to 50. You can use the catalog through Order Now, or an RFS if it's more than 50. And then for your SSL, you can see that the threshold is 20 there when to use the service catalog, when to use the RFS. But one of the good things here in this particular contract and these services for voice LAN and voice and LAN, as you need to make installations, moves, adds, changes, or deletes, the IMAC, that there's no additional cost. The cost of making all this was factored in at the beginning of the contract and is included or calculated in the rates. So there's no additional charge unless there is some cabling or wiring that needs to be done. And that leads us to slide 34. As you look at slide 34, it discusses specifically cabling and wiring. If you're looking at up to 9 individuals or 9 workstations, let's say, and you need to have some cabling done, you place an order through this catalog, through Order Now. AT&T will assign a project manager, and a technician would come and basically do the work. It's possible that a tech could come out on site while they're doing a pre-approved work and find that some additional work needs to be done. And I think in the past, honestly, these guys were getting the work done, and sometimes they would just go ahead and pull a cable here and there, and they didn't charge us for it. Well, now they're trying to be pretty structured and keeping track of everything, as they should. So if they're on site and they find something that needs to be done, they need to talk to you and get prior approval before they commit or before they continue with the work. They would be looking for your approval from them. If it's 10 or more changes or moves or whatever, and it's requiring cabling, you'll need to submit an RFS, and then you'll get a formal proposal back from AT&T, and then you'll be able to know how much that's going to cost and actually at that time decide to move forward or not. Moving to slide 35, there are reports that help you manage these 3 towers. The hot and cold utilization report, remember we were talking about hot and cold circuits, 50% and 1%. You can get those through the AT&T account manager, and you can just request those on a one-time basis, and they can provide that to each of the agencies. There's also a tool that AT&T uses called VitalNet, and it actually helps you dig down a little deeper, the next level in some of the utilization reports on those circuits. You can also pull your own hot and cold and other type of information. And if you want that, we're thinking some of the agencies already have a person, but we would like to have at least a person, one person, at the agency who's somewhat technical and can work through and understand how to pull these reports down using VitalNet, that tool. And there's information here that you could give the CRM so that they could go ahead and work with AT&T and get one of your staff members to have access to VitalNet. And then coming soon is video conferencing utilization report. You'll see that probably in the next month or so, and you'll have access to those reports as well. Moving to slide 36. If you have discrepancies, as we have talked in the past, this is the same kind of a slide. If you see that you have a discrepancy with the resource unit itself, it may be more along an asset discrepancy or an asset issue. Your asset manager can use change an attribute to an existing asset product in the catalog, Order Now, and can change the asset attribute right there via the catalog. That super user asset manager can do that themselves. But if you've identified resource units that are incorrectly assigned to you or incorrectly billed, or you dispute that bill, obviously you can send an email to the chargebackadmin@gta.ga.gov with documentation, and we'll go ahead and open the case and work that dispute. Moving to slide 37. Our role in all of this management is to work with governing the towers to try and improve the processes it takes on ordering and verifying all the different services that we have and reporting those to you and to all of us to make sure that the SLAs, the service level agreements, are being met and that the services are happening as you need them to occur, and that you understand the cost, and that we also are negotiating competitive rates, trying to bring the rates down as we go through year over year. And then also we work with you and with the service providers when there's a dispute, and we work through the resolution of that using, as we said, the chargeback admin email address. And as always, if there's an escalation needed, your CRM is the primary point of contact to make that happen. Moving to slide 38, kind of a summary here of how to manage the consumption for these three towers, looking at disconnecting circuits that are no longer in use, right-sizing the circuits through the capacity management process using the different reports that we talked about, the hot and cold reports, managing the EUC device count for LAN ports and how unique that is to the particular LAN tower, because it does involve IBM and the count of EUC devices there. And then setting and enforcing your agency telecommunications policy. That pretty much concludes. We'll do some wrap-up here. We'll move to slide 39 to preview what's ahead coming in October the 24th. It's kind of a summary wrap-up education session, and also a look ahead as what's coming up the rest of this year and into 2014. Slide 40 is kind of the close, just making sure that you go ahead and complete your learning objective evaluation, and to remind you that the GET education session in October for October 24th, 2013. Slide 41 actually shows some examples, or kind of gives you what's in the addendum, and there are examples of reports here, the hot and cold report, the VitalNet report. So this is a good reference guide, reference material to have as you look through the next few slides. We won't cover those here, but they are included, and you certainly are welcome to make use of those. These are pretty good examples of the different reports. And that concludes the September GET Education session for the voice, the LAN and the WAN towers. Thank you.